My name's Avni, and I work for Facebook. I'll give you a little bit more context about who I am in a few minutes. But I'm based in Singapore, and my sweet spot in life is to talk about the intersection of tech and empathy. I believe that we can leverage digital spaces for good in this world, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about some of the underlying dynamics of how technology is influencing our worlds, the worlds of caregivers, counselors, social workers, and give you a case study, actually a solution that I piloted in India that talks about the intersection of tech and counseling. And then I want to hear from you guys about some of the things that you're grappling with in terms of questions, some things that you're trying, maybe some pilots that you want to run for your own services. So let's use this time to actually think tactically about how you can leverage digital space to reach more people and to affect more lives. So just a quick intro about this presentation. It's about leveraging technology to create spaces for care, listening, and counseling outside of the four walls of our offices, clinics, and hospitals. So non-traditional spaces and safe spaces that are outside the brick and mortar walls that we're used to providing services in. In the age of Me Too hashtags bringing out stories of trauma and people connecting more and more online and less offline, how can we as practitioners build community where people are, to bring our superpowers of care and counseling where it is needed most? So some of the learning objectives for this session are learning how you can leverage digital spaces for reaching more people. And we're not going to get so tactical in what I present. I want to get more tactical on this from your questions. So just note down all your questions or pop them in the chat when we have the Q&A section. Feel free to keep commenting on what I'm saying. And I'm going to be reading your chats as well as sort of going through the deck and just sort of talking off the cuff. So that's the first learning objective. The second is identifying the purposes of creating healing spaces online. Why should we even think about taking care digital? And third is learning to create stronger communities of healers to help people where they are using technology. And I want to start by saying, it takes us about 7 exposures to any sort of information before we are compelled to act. And so I want us all to keep this in mind, because if we put behavior into the context of what we understand, which is ourselves, some of what I'm saying will actually make sense. And to leave us with, as safe space builders, counselors, and social workers, we constantly invite people to us, right? We tell them to come through our doors to open up and get help. But are we in the right place to reach them? So some thinking questions for you as I go through presentation and as we sort of speak, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you about the things that you're thinking and sort of what's on your mind. I believe that a few of us are just here to learn new ways to reach people. And so we can definitely talk through that. I haven't prepared many case studies because I think we are our own case studies. So I want to share a little bit about who I am first. So who is this lady running her mouth with the white cat eyeglasses? You can see I'm leaving some of my social media handles because I want you guys to reach out to me. So you can email me, you can hit me up on Instagram, you can always find me on Facebook. I work for Facebook, so I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. But I want to encourage us to continue the conversation even after today. So right now, I'm the program manager for community partnerships in APAC for Facebook. And I help community leaders power up their leadership, access and impact across the Facebook platform of apps. It's Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, which is the AR and VR platform, internet.org. And so, all of these platforms actually belong to Facebook. And I'm a lover of using technology to help the underserved and voiceless. And in some of my previous lives, I've formed communities and platforms to foster empathy and support for women and young people. So my super sweet spot is women, and I also focus, sort of hyper focus a little bit on younger populations. One of my last ventures was called Love Doctor, and this was a service to bring counseling and confidential sex and healthy relationship advice to young people using chat, SMS, and email. We served over 400,000 young people across the world. And as a part of Love Doctor, I also started an initiative called Snap Counselors with a few wonderful partners, Raj Patil and Nida Sharif. And I'll talk a little bit more about Snap Counselors because it's exactly the type of story we need to hear when we are talking about bringing services to the people. And so Snap Counselors was a youth counseling platform that we formed on Snapchat, specifically aimed at teen dating violence. And besides that, I've been a social entrepreneur. I've been in the nonprofit sector for about 14 years. I've worked in India, Kenya, and the US, and now in Singapore. So that's enough about me. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I'm just gonna keep asking you and poking you because I really want to hear from you too. So I'd love to know a little bit more about everyone that's watching. So all of you guys, I see Jan, I see Virginia, I see Lisa. If you could share, just a little brief bio about yourself in the chat, all of us can get to know one another as we're going through this session. So I'll ask you to do that. So let's get right to it. And community, as we know it, is dead. If we think about where our parents and our grandparents accessed circles of support, accessed social reinforcements, it was the public square, it was the church, it was the temple, it was the Kiwanis Club, it was Rotary, it was even the local supermarket. And these spaces are breaking down, and we don't have them anymore. Most of us press a button and we get things delivered to us. We're communicating using these devices. Heck, I'm using 2 devices to talk to you. I have my notes on my phone and I have like a screen in front of me. So, even for me who believes in sort of presence and connection, I'm having to toggle between a couple of things. So give me like a thumbs up in the chat if you understand what I mean when I say community as we know it is dead. So I just want to do a gut check to see if that resonates. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us. Former DCite, I went to George Washington University, so really good to see you. Awesome, Jonathan. So Jonathan feels this. So, we don't have those same physical spaces. Danielle saying yes, Virginia saying yes, I know, it's sad. And so the way our generation and so the generations that have come after us are accessing support is online. So, I said earlier about it taking 7 exposures to something before we act. Look at how much you have to see something that flashes across your screen, across your face for you to do something. And today's economy is the economy of attention. So good, awesome. You guys all get this and you're feeling this. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Marquette. Oh, the audio keeps cutting in and out. Okay. Let me know if there's any more issues with the audio, and I'll see if we can troubleshoot it. Otherwise, I apologize for that. What I want to say is this is the economy of attention. And so when you combine the economy of attention with the fact that traditional community spaces are dead, what you have to grapple with the fact is that we are in a position to have to constantly message to be able to be seen, to be able to be visible. So if that makes sense to you guys, and if you can feel that in your own life, that your physical spaces are going away, which we all agree with, but if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting inundated with ads, I'm getting inundated with information, there's too much screen time, I'm just like overexposed, then put a smiley face in the chat. So I'm just gonna keep doing gut checks with everyone, just so that we can all see if we're on the same page. And if you don't agree with something, let's discuss the nuance. So, for us, those of us in our lines of work, we're here to create shelter and safe spaces. That's what most of us are doing in this world. And so, you know, in order to have a shelter, you have to be visible, right? How does anyone know where to take refuge if they can't find you? And when physical communities are breaking down, and it's now about the economy of attention and the seduction of the screen, you've got to find ways to message online and use digital space and even converge digital space to get in front of people and to find the people that need you, because they're not going to be walking across your storefront. You're not going to be meeting them in church. So I wanted to actually share something that I read in an article in The Economist today, because I work so closely with youth. There's been a distinction between millennials and Gen Z. And that distinction now is that Gen Z is a, you know, for all of the maligning of the millennials, Gen Z is actually a goody-goody generation. But I want you to listen to what they're saying about today's teenagers. Finally, technology has probably changed people's behavior. Teenagers are heavy internet users, the more so as they acquire smartphones. By their own account, 15-year-olds in OECD countries spend 146 minutes a day online, online on weeknights. So when are they doing their homework? Just to take note of that. And up from 105 minutes in 2012. So that time online is increasing at a rapid pace. Chileans lead the rich world, putting in an average of 195 minutes on weekdays and 230 minutes on weekend days. Social media allows teenagers craving for contact with peers to be squared with parents' desire to keep their offspring safe and away from harmful substances. So this whole article was basically talking about how teens actually, they're not drinking, they're not doing traditional drugs. They're definitely more into marijuana now that it's been sort of legalized and normalized across the world. But beyond that, they're good kids because parents have spent more time with them. But the flip side of this is that you know, what they're saying is that they're spending so much time online, and it does satisfy that need for connection. But because they communicate largely online, they can exchange gossip, insults, nude pictures, but not bodily fluids, blows, or bottles of vodka. So I thought that was funny. Regina, I'll drop that article in the chat in a bit. I have to research for it because I had to close the tab to make sure you guys can see me and hear me properly. So this trade-off, the digital trade-off, the do-gooder trade-off comes at a cost. So Sophie Wasson, a psychologist at Harvard Westlake, a private school in Los Angeles, says that some teenagers seem to use social media as an alternative to face-to-face communication. In doing so, they pass up some opportunities to develop deep emotional connections with their friends, which are built on nonverbal cues as well as verbal ones. Think about the nuance that is lost when you're chatting with somebody when you're unable to see their face, especially for those of us who are watching this that are counselors. I know I am. We miss so much subtext when we're not able to see the expression, the way somebody holds their body. So just, you know, put a pin in that. Ms. Wasson believes that social media widens the gap between how teenagers feel about themselves and what they think their friends want them to be. So it's self-actualization, what they really feel about themselves, and this perception of an ideal self, which is very hard to navigate for young people. Online, everybody else is always happy, good-looking, and at a party. So just so interesting about the dynamics of today. Let me know what you think about this quote. It just struck me in the few minutes before I was coming online to talk to you guys. Leilani, welcome from Tuskegee, Alabama. We've got the South representing. I'm from North Carolina, so it's really lovely to see you guys. And Virginia's saying, I lead the largest workforce development program for social workers in California and and one of the largest in the U.S. Oh, very cool. So you're doing this at Berkeley. Super cool. Please tell us more about your work. So I'm just gonna move on. I want to give a little bit of larger context to the digital space that we're operating in today. You guys can clearly see these stats. Bernstein is from South Carolina, Hello, my dear. We've got a North Kakalaki girl in the house. Really nice to see you guys. So around the world in 2018, you can see some stats. These are a year old, so they're like not even current, but about 7.5 billion people online. You can see, 7.5 billion people in the world, 4 billion people are online, they're internet users. Look at the mobile penetration, right? Unique mobile users, 5 billion people, and 2.9 billion people who are active on social media. I don't know any public square, church, anything where I can get 2.9 billion people. So anyway, I just want to leave that there. So you can't ignore these platforms and these tools. The numbers speak for themselves. And it's not, I want us to get away from thinking about being online as marketing our services. It's really not about that. It's about positioning yourself as a thought leader, right? Because it is content that is consumed. It is ideas that are consumed, not ads. And in this day and age, the way people make decisions to patronize your services is because they perceive you as a thought leader, or they're social proof. So I'm happy to explore that more through conversation if you guys have questions about that. So you need to make yourself easy to access. Using the new meeting grounds, these places, let's go to the next slide. You can see the social network share of time, which ones are most popular sort of around the world. So using these new meeting grounds online to seek connection is like a completely different way of forming deeper contact, right? We converse in the public space of the comment, but we slide into the DMs for deeper contact. Around this is also that economy of attention phenomenon of swipeability. So any of you that have ever been on Tinder or understand the world of online dating, from my time as like a sex and relationship counselor, these topics came up a lot, but we're used to, if we're not interested, we're just gonna go in the other direction. And so in thinking about presenting yourself in these digital spaces, what you have to realize that it not only has to be appealing to the mind, and appealing to the heart, but appealing to the eye. It's just some things to think about. Once again, not gonna get tactical until we start talking about your work. And the other aspect here is the idea of anonymity. So on some social media platforms and digital spaces, you are bound by the covenant to be yourself, right? And in others, you have to be a brand or an avatar of yourself. And that means that people can say anything and they can express themselves. My experience with this as a counselor who's run a digital counseling platform is that anonymity allows people to express themselves in ways we could never imagine. So while people are craving this deeper connection and not getting it offline because those spaces are breaking down, because community as we know it is dead, they are finding other ways to express themselves, talking to each other through these screens of being their own avatars and not really themselves, and they're finding their voice. So it's an interesting duality here. The breakdown of the traditional public square in preventing us from the nuance and the subtext of connection and of getting help and of finding support, but the power of anonymity to allow people to connect. So, you can clearly see the platforms where most people are and where you should hedge your bets in terms of thinking about where you could begin to build movement, where you can begin to create safe space. Hi, Barbara, good morning. So good to have you here. So let's talk about Virginia says, would like to know more about the digital counseling industry and ways to preserve privacy and confidentiality of clients. So a quick thought on this is that those of you in the US may have, or around the world, if you're in an OECD country, will have some compliance issues that you have to think about. The other part of this is building your own systems in place. The way that I dealt with this as a counselor was to have everyone sign confidentiality agreements and to store my data in an encrypted place. So not sure if that helps. That's not the depth of the question that I want to answer, but we can explore more a little bit later. But just the quick and dirty is, one, look at your compliance for your state or your country. Two, look at platforms that allow you to store your data, because in some cases that's a part of the compliance. So make sure that your data is encrypted. Three, realize that this is the dual-edged sword of having a device and accessing any sort of counseling. I use, actually personally, the platform called BetterHelp. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but BetterHelp uses password protection to make sure that nobody can get into your account. So you might have to think of safety layers to make sure that that container that you're creating for counseling stays safe. So hope this helps. Sharon, so good to have you here. She's with the National Child Welfare Workforce Institute. Fantastic. Really good to have you guys here. So you're seeing where you should be. And now I want to talk a little bit about movements. I was really galvanized and enthralled with the Me Too movement. And I met Tarana Burke in Singapore. She spoke at a Facebook event last year. And one thing, I was really struck by one thing she said. She said, you know, I've been doing the work of working with survivors of sexual violence for years. She'd been doing the work for like 10 or 15 years already. And she never could have imagined that the movement would have gotten so big because of the power of stories and the hashtag. So I want us to think more about leveraging movements and the movement towards this idea that wokeness is an aspiration for most people now. It is a good thing to be self-actualized. It's a good thing to be open. It's a good thing to talk about your shadow self. It's a good thing to heal and talk about self-healing. And so in this day and age, we're seeing a resurgence of the activism of the 60s, and movements are starting on the public stage and growing viral in the digital stage. Or they're starting in the digital stage and going viral in the public stage. So you can see many examples of this. You guys can maybe list some examples. And awesome, I think we have information. Diana says she has the information about storing digital data to comply with HIPAA, which is US specific, and we'll get it posted. Fantastic. So you guys can check out that resource on Social Work Helper. So this idea of wokeness and people wanting to heal, people wanting to seek out to help is such an advantage to those of us that work in the healing and helping space, because people are actively looking for information. So all of the platforms are rife with people who are taking this messaging and they're using it to help people access services that they need. So there's lots of fantastic psychologists. There's people that are on the internet that are doing their own Instagram TV shows. I would urge you guys just to like start clicking around, learn the hashtags, see how these things go viral, see how things become a meme. It's really cool to understand the dynamics of virality. And in the age of wokeness, self-care, self-love, healing, getting over trauma, surviving and thriving after abuse are things that are front and center on the mind of people. So it's a Gen Z top priority and a millennial top priority, this idea of wokeness. And when we're thinking about creating communities to lead people on a journey of healing, some things to think about in the age of wokeness are creating the space for epiphany. And typically that's by sharing content that talks about the dynamics of how people might be hurting or the dynamics of how people could be healing. Creating that space for the aha moment is really important. Helping the connections that they can make with each other. So it's not just you that's bringing people along the line of wokeness. It's peers sharing with each other, sharing stories, becoming a part of each other's lives that can lead people along this path. But those connections have to be made on authenticity. Oh, I love this. Okay, I work with the opioid epidemic, the families of individuals who are facing addiction. There's still so much shame and rejection. I would love any ideas for what getting a movement with this population is like. Any thoughts for their aha? Let us ponder this. But in the program that I run, Nancy, there's a great guy named Ryan who runs a addiction awareness movement, and you might know of it. And I'll pop the name of his community in the chat once we're done. I think it's Facing Addiction, and he is like really getting it. He is getting the understanding of digital space, and you would love a cool. Nancy, find me on social media, and I'm happy to make the connection for you. He has a Facebook group. So Facing Addiction has a Facebook group. That's a great way to get him. But off the top of my head, I'm gonna tell you, stories matter, and destigmatizing opioid addiction as happening to those people. Oh, you know, those types of people. Well, no, people who deal with opioid addiction look like you and I, right? And so having faces, names, stories come out, and I think making it human is a part of the aha. And that anyone who's dealing with something, it could be that, you know, with the opioid addiction and especially prescription drugs, correct me if I'm wrong, it just takes, you know, it's very easy. It's so easy to get addicted that people don't even realize. And so there's so many people dealing with this. And so the more we talk about it and share stories, and especially share faces, it's about the bravery to share the face, that somebody that looks like that, oh, wow, somebody that looks like that. This is also something that, this is also something that works in the domestic violence and sexual assault work that I used to do. Like, oh my gosh, she was abused. Oh wow, he was a survivor of child sexual abuse. It is, yeah, it is a silent epidemic. And so, you know, interesting. When it's silent, then exploit the power of anonymity, but don't hesitate to tell stories. Stories have power, and I think if you can think of like something that works in terms of like finding a hashtag or something that connects all of these stories together, like a central theme that you can bucket it under, that could be really effective. Let's think more about this. So in terms of the wokeness thing, Nancy, this is also something that you can I think capitalize on, right? So like the creation of safe space and first getting people dealing with addiction together to share is one thing. We've seen so many models of this. Look at any of the 12-step programs. It works because you're creating a safe container for people to meet again and again and again. And these containers are now coming online, which I think those of us that have seen these types of programs know. And so thinking about how do you create that safe container? And once you create the safe container, how do you bubble up the stories in a way that protects the privacy and the integrity of the people in that community, but still is allowed for the rawness of what they deal with to share with the outside world is important. This is also something that is a political issue and needs regulation across the states. And so there's a lot of important awareness building that you have to do. And so you can reach out to lawmakers online as well. They have their own spaces where they're reaching out to constituents. And Facebook is actually testing a product that allows you to raise awareness around the cause. I would also look at platforms like change.org for petition signing and stuff. So that could be really powerful. But nothing leverages and moves lawmakers more than stories. So if you can collect some stories, I think it'd be really nice. So moving beyond wokeness and talking about the network effect. So the meta version of creating these safe spaces and creating these containers in digital spaces, whether that's a Facebook group or a forum or a WhatsApp group or a call, you know, even like a telephone tree, like a how are you doing? When you're thinking about holding space online, you can leverage the power of the network effect. And the network effect in this case is twofold. One, getting many healers in the room. And so when you have more than one safe space convener, healer, counselor coming together on the same platform, the pull of that is huge. So the thought leadership of one is important, and having a clear voice here is really important. But having 5, 10, 15, 20, one from every state, one from every country in the world can be incredibly powerful. And the reason is that it not only helps others to find us because you're leveraging the power of the network to get attention, right? Oh, send this out to your friends. Oh, you're creating a website, you're starting a Facebook group. Let's all share this with our friends and family and our stakeholders and see how many people will follow us. That's one thing. The second thing is we as healers have to put the oxygen mask on first. And so I really feel like when we are able to create spaces of healers like this, I mean, this is a space of healer, this chat happening. I see Virginia sharing information about Brene Brown and her research-based view on shame and the resilience theory that's come as a result to connect back to Nancy's work on the opioid epidemic. So thank you. This is an example right here of the power of getting so many healers together in one space, in one time. Incredible. So we're putting our own oxygen mask on first. We're asking for help. We're becoming vulnerable. So we as healers are able to fill the tank and are able to give back more to the world. So many healers equals more impact. The exponential impact of different voices is unparalleled, which I talked about. And before you seek customers or stakeholders or constituents, whatever you call them, you have to seek community for yourself. So you have to understand the tenets of a community by building community for yourself before you can go out and try to build it for others. And a few examples of this, I want to just sort of name some communities that I work with directly or some that I know of as well that are doing this really well. So one is Black Therapists Rock. This is a US-based organization for Black therapists. The second is the Creative Counselors Club. So these are just some examples that I know of. This is an organization based in the UK. The Empathy and Safe Space Mentorship Group. This is my group that I run on Facebook for conveners of safe space building communities. It's just a Facebook group where we talk about the challenges of being people running safe spaces. There's a group called Parenting Mental Health, and Suzanne Alderton, based out of the UK, formed this group when she had a daughter who was suicidal. And she wanted to provide support to parents who were dealing with having a child that had mental health issues. And so by supporting the parents were able to better support their children. And she had been through her own journey herself. Incredibly powerful story. There's groups for Single Moms Indonesia and Single Moms Egypt are also two partners that I work with in the fellowship program that I run for Facebook. Spaces for single mothers to express, to vent, to heal, to get counseling, to get peer support, to get training for jobs. A multi-layered space that convenes itself both physically and digitally for women to support other women. And then there's this great psychologist that I've been following on Instagram called The Holistic Psychologist. I love her. And I think her content plays so well to this idea of the tipping point of the wokeness movement. And she has a hashtag she uses, hashtag self-healers. And this hashtag is getting picked up and used by so many people. So, you know, even if you want to start a conversation and you're thinking about how to brand your movement, you can pick up and use some of these other hashtags to get eyeballs on platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and lots of other platforms. So that is the network effect that I wanted to talk to you about, creating containers for yourself where you fundamentally, viscerally understand the need for communities and the need to leverage digital spaces can really help you in your work in transferring that skill over to finding the people that need you. So I hope that was helpful. So I want to talk about a theory that I have, and it sort of formed the basis for SNAP counselors. So SNAP counselors, like I said, was an initiative where myself, I had an organization called Love Doctor. So it was Love Doctor, an organization called Chayn, CHAYN. They were a group that created do-it-yourself guides for women to get out of abuse. They had a legal guide. They had a guide for students and teens who have been in abusive relationships. They had guides for digital privacy. And so it wasn't a full, can you guys hear me? Okay, Rosita's saying the audio is gone. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. So it wasn't a service provision organization. It was really focused on providing the right information in a step-by-step way so that, you know, women could actually figure out how to do it themselves. And then another partner, Raj Patil, worked for a popular advertising agency in Bombay, India. So the three of us got together and we formed this initiative, Snap Counselors. And at that point in time, Snapchat was the most popular platform for teens. So there are billions of teens using Snapchat in the world. I think it was 4 billion. Not 4 billion. It was probably 2 billion at that point in time. So it was the most popular social media platform. And this was in 2016. And so the three of us got together. And what we did on Snapchat is that we had a Snapchat ID. And so Snapchat allows you to share stories. So you basically are pushing out content to all of the people that follow you on Snapchat, and then you can chat with them individually and privately in sort of your own private chat room. The cool thing about Snapchat is that the messages disappeared. So in terms of privacy, we chose that space because the messages would disappear. And if people were to access the teens' phones, they wouldn't see the conversation that they were having with the Love Doctor Snapchat ID. So our whole point for this movement, because there's a lot of criticism, so we got crazy amounts of press. I mean, I never would have imagined we would have gotten press like this. So I popped in the corner, you can see the right-hand corner of the presentation, like all of the places where we were profiled. And feel free to Google it, but the point here being is that we only got the press because we were using the container of Snapchat, because it was something sexy. It was a digital intervention. But we got so much pushback. And a lot of the pushback was because people like us, people in our fields, felt like we were trying to replace traditional counseling. And both you and I know that you know, a digital conversation can never replace that face-to-face connection, can never replace the nuance. So our only goal, and I was the one on the back end doing all the counseling at this time, our only goal was to initiate conversations and hopefully connect these teens to organizations on the ground that could then take over. So the point is that, you know, if we go back to when I said 7 exposures, these teens were consuming our content. And you can see in the corner below, there's the phones. So these were some of the things that we were creating. We had little animated and drawn messages about abuse, the dynamics of abuse. I would go on live video on Snapchat and just talk about the dynamics of abuse. People would talk back and forth to me. They would send messages. You know, we did a call to action, please send your messages of hope. So people would send messages of hope, and we would include that in the Snapchat story. And there were people that we spoke to over the course of 2-3 months. And this campaign on Snapchat went on for about 4 or 5 months. Not gonna lie though, at the end of it, I was tired because we didn't have a lot of operational help, and we brought on Day One, which is an organization serving teens in New York, to help do some of the counseling using our Snapchat account with some of the interns that were there in their master's programs for counseling and who wanted to be LCWs. LSWs, licensed social workers. So that was a cool intervention, and the press certainly helped. We got some awards. I was able to go to Madrid and do a TEDx talk about abuse in the digital age, ending abuse in the digital age. So I've popped that link in the chat for you guys to watch. But all this to tell you that, one, this was free for us to do. Snapchat was free. It didn't cost us anything. Two, creating the content on Snapchat allowed people to have that aha moment, to recognize that they were in that position, typically by sharing stories, typically by sharing dynamics around teen dating violence. We even just would share content from all of the wonderful organizations working on teen dating violence around the world, give them credit in the Snapchat story. But we were able to leverage the other people's content in the Snapchat story. Snapchat stories had a longevity of 1 day, so they would go away after 24 hours, and so would the messages. So every day we were having to post new content. It was time intensive, but it was so incredible because there was no cost to us except for time. So I'm sharing this case study to tell you that you can create something revolutionary using tech platforms that cost you nothing and get you tons of attention. And people will eat it up because if you go to where people are, if you're able to leverage the dynamics of virality, then you are automatically sort of putting yourself in the right place to be able to generate positive momentum. And so I hope that helped. I also feel like really strongly, like before people see you physically, they will research you, right? So even we just quickly Google people, we Google places, we're doing our research, so research-based society. And so that visibility is super important. If they see that people are already using you, using your services, reaching out to you in the digital space, they're gonna reach out to you too. And if people can't find you online, you don't exist. And more so because that is a behavioral trait of generations now. So millennials and Gen Z do this every single day. Before they do anything, they Google it. Before they do anything, they look on a recommendation app. So people are stronger and more prepared. So you have to be able to get in front of their eyes. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about social proof, in that in seeing your tone, in seeing your language, in seeing your presentation on something like an Instagram account or a Facebook page. For younger people, less so Facebook Blue, by the way. Facebook Blue meaning the main Facebook app or what you guys use on your desktop. For younger people, it's all Instagram and still Snapchat, but less so. In my part of the world, it's also WhatsApp. So they're on those platforms. And so if they see that other people are in your communities, if they see that you're visible, then they're going to reach out to you. If they don't see that, then they're not going to come. They're not going to come to your message box. They're not going to come to your door. So that's Snap Counselors in a nutshell. Happy to answer questions. Now I want to talk to you about your lives, your questions. Where do you need to build the new public square? Your questions, your thoughts. Let's pop some questions and thoughts into the chat here.